Let's get started. We are live and we are so excited to see everybody here today. When you come into the webinar, please in the chat introduce yourself. And if you want to, you can share a favorite digital learning tool and activity because we're going to be talking and sharing a lot about that today. So we are very excited to have you here for making digital learning a team effort. And I'm really excited because I get to present with my dear friend, Brianna, and my name is Shannon McClintock Miller. I am the District Teacher, Librarian, and Innovation Director at Van Meter Community School in Iowa. I also serve as one of the Future Ready Librarians spokespersons with my friend, Mark Ray. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Shannon M. Miller, and I blog at the Library Voice. And I put my email there just in case you have any questions too.
Awesome. So I am Brianna Henneke-Hodges, and I am the spokesperson for Future Ready Instructional Leaders, which includes coaches and curriculum and instructional technology and all kinds of things, TOSAs. We're that kind of group that has a lot of different titles and things like that. And so we walk through a lot of the practitioner type lens. So what does that look like in the classroom? What does it look like when we're working through professional learning, all of those different kinds of pieces. And so I am super excited to be here with y'all today. I'm also national faculty for Future Ready. So you see me lots of different places, former English teacher, former district administrator, and I am in Texas, y'all, if you can't tell by my accent. I see lots and lots of my Texas folks out there, and it's exciting to see you. So you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at bhodgesedu, and my email is on there as well. Please don't hesitate to give us a shout, and we'll be happy to answer any questions or share resources as much as we have.
So today, Bree and I get to talk about how our two roles combine and work together. And as you can see, as librarians and also as instructional coaches, when we look at our frameworks, there are a lot of things, of course, that we focus on that are similar and maybe the same, and a lot of different things on how we work together. And so we wanted to put these side by side just to start, so we can reflect on this as we talk for the next hour and as you go back to your roles within your school and talk about collaboration and work with your instructional coaches and your teachers and librarian and those people within your school.
So one of the things that for me personally, I go back and I'm going to travel back in time to when I first attended a Future Ready event, and I was in district, and I attended it with my superintendent and our director of technology. And one of the things that was really that stood out to me that was really, really cool was talking through these gears and knowing that these gears were the same regardless of what your role was. And then fast forward to getting to have a chance to work through the gears and be on committees to walk through what that looks like for creating the instructional coaches strand and, kind of walking through these pieces. I absolutely loved that our content, those content lenses, just like we have in the classroom, are the same, but we look at them through the role and through what our audience is, right? So like, you as an English teacher have the same content, but you're looking at it through a different lens based upon who your students are as the teacher that's across from you, right? And so I really thought that it was and it's truly still one of the things that's so important to me is that, nobody gets to toss out a gear and say, nope, that's not in my wheelhouse. That's not something that's important to us. So, as librarians, we don't get to say like, oh, robust infrastructure, that's a technology thing. We don't worry about that, right? Or as curriculum, we don't say data and privacy, that's not something that we're going to worry about. Somebody else is going to take care of that. Instead, we look at that through each one of our lenses. And so one of the pieces that is really great about is really great about our framework is this document, and Shannon and I are going to kind of run through it really quickly. But basically, what we've done is we've taken the strands and we've kind of broken them apart by year to look at what does this look like whenever you are looking at it through the lens of a principal, or the lens of an instructional coach, or the lens of a librarian, right? And so you're seeing that that every piece is important to your role. It just might look different. And this is really, really important, specifically when we're talking through instructional leadership, instructional coaching, and librarians, for example, because not every school district has both on your campus. Maybe you have a librarian who functions in instructional coaching and is coming in and working through instructional technology and is bringing all of those things together. And so in that situation, you might be looking at both of those lenses to, to bring in what is your role as a future ready instructional coach, in addition to your role as a future ready librarian, right? Or maybe you have both of those roles there. How do you decide which is the part that's going to be most important to this particular role? And then how do we combine that effort to make sure that we're creating a good, solid team so that we're not stepping on top of each other, but instead presenting a united front? And as a former basketball coach, I think that that's really, really important. I had this one amazing group of girls one year when I was coaching, and we had one girl who was just a total rock star. She was a complete and total rock star point guard, and she would fly down the court and she would do some amazing moves, and then she would score every single time. And in this one particular game, she did this 5 times down the court in a row, and just back to back points, right? And all of a sudden we got 10 points on the board. And the next time down, the 6th trip down, everyone jumped around her and completely cut her off. And there wasn't anything that she could do, right? And she got really, really frustrated. And then she was looking to her teammates, but what happened was the defense realized that they didn't have to guard anybody else because she was the only one who was doing something. And so I remember calling a timeout and bringing everybody over, and she was so frustrated. And I was like, well, nobody has to look at anybody else because you're trying to do it all yourself. So how about we look to the strength of our team and start passing and start, really relying on our teammates and really building this up so that we can be effective, not wear anybody out, but instead really truly develop the team that we're kind of moving forward with. And so I kind of look at that the same way when we're looking through the strands, is how can we create the best team so that not any one person is completely worn out, and instead is able to really support each other as we move forward in this. All right. So in the chat, if you guys can throw in some your ideas of how do you work best together. And Shannon, let's hear from you. We just heard me kind of jump in there and kind of run through some of these things. What works well for you in Van Meter? What are some of the tips that you have about working together with your team for instruction?
Yeah, I would love to share what it looks like for us. And I've been at Van Meter now, twice now for the last 13 years. And so we have it down pretty well, but there's always room for improvement and things that change. And as we know this year, last year now, when we all stayed home and we started learning together remotely, that it changed a lot too. But I think that we've taken strides really to be even better in our collaboration. And my collaboration might look something like this if I'm at home or if I'm sitting in the library working, but it also might look like this where I'm collaborating with all of the teachers, or maybe sitting down with a teacher friend and collaborating either face to face, or a lot of times now on just our computer. And thinking about collaboration and all the things that we do as teachers and librarians or instructional coaches, whatever our role is, can be a little overwhelming at times. But I do a lot of just looking around and seeing, not only how I can tie in what I need to do as a librarian, but how I can support the role of others, how I can support them. And as you can see on the left-hand side, I follow a lot of different calendars. And if I want to look at what is happening in their classrooms or maybe something that's coming up special at school, I can turn those on and off so I can have a finger on everything that's going on within our school. Also, when I sit down, I think about a lot of different things. I think about my framework and I think about the common conversations like Bria's talked about on what we can have and how we can support each other within our roles when it comes to Future Ready. I also, as a librarian, I think about our standards from AASL and how we can not only lead within our role, but also how collaboration is such a huge part of what we do as librarians. And also, I think about the ISTE standards, and there are standards for us as teachers, there are standards for the coaches, for administrators. But again, throughout the whole thing, one of the biggest parts is that collaboration piece and how we are working together. Now, for me at Van Meter, when I think about everything that I do and everything that I collaborate on with our teachers and our administrators and our kids, I have a curriculum that I follow, and it is K-12. We're a K-12 building. Well, we're preschool to 12th grade now. And it's not only thinking about what I do as a librarian, but how I'm also tying in technology and, of course, a love of reading and things like we're adopting new computer science standards next year in Iowa. We're adopting new social studies standards this year. So it always changes. And this is just a Google Doc that is active and constantly changing, but it's not just mine to look at. It's something too that when I'm collaborating, I'm looking at this together with my teachers to make sure that we have these standards covered for our kids. And a new column, a thing that I just added within the last few days, is we have a new column where we're going to start keeping track too of all of the technology that we're using and what are we doing within that different grade level or even elementary to middle to high school. And a lot of that has to do with some of these new standards like the computer science standards that we are adopting next year. Another thing that's been really helpful for us in our collaboration, and this is something that we can talk about collaboration all the time, but it is overwhelming. And it's like, when do we fit it in? How does it look? How do you have time to do it? And this was a big aha a few years ago when we started just a Google Doc and we started keeping track of what our collaboration looked like. And this was nice because not only for us when we sat down and we collaborated, but also for us to look at what was happening in a progression throughout the year. What were the teachers doing? How were they tying in special events that were going on? How are we tying in like their reading curriculum and social studies? And when we started to think about it this way, it made it so they weren't just in isolation teaching. That collaboration started really sticking and making sense. And year after year, we can build on this. So it's not something that we do new every year. We can build on those resources and those great lessons, and then how we're tying in digital technology and the things that we want to within the classrooms, but also as they go from elementary to secondary and even then on to college. And so it's something that has really helped us when we think about how we're collaborating and the big why of why we're collaborating too. Another thing that's been really helpful, and this is a huge tip, and I'll share a little bit more in a little bit about this, but Google Classroom has been one of the best things for me when it comes to collaboration. Not only to have a Google Classroom, but I follow all of the teachers' Google Classrooms. And that might sound a little bit overwhelming, but I try to make it be a place that I look for things that are coming up. I try to tie into what they're doing, look for ideas. And if you're kind of stuck or you don't know what you're doing, it is like the best way to jump in and see how you can help. And so I'll share a little bit more on how I do that. But those are just some of the little tips and tricks that help me as I'm collaborating and how I work with the teachers and making them feel too like they're always part of that conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Shannon.
Yeah.
We're going to jump in again, trying to be considerate of time. And, there's so much to cover in all of this, but I'm going to walk through from an instructional coach's perspective, some of the things that I do around TPAC. And if you're not familiar with TPAC, the T stands for technology, P stands for pedagogy, A is for and, it doesn't really have to be there. And then C stands for content and the K stands for knowledge. So one of the things that I also like to say whenever I'm talking about this is even though it starts with T, that's actually, the acronym starts with T, but we don't start with the T because we actually start with the C. And so CPTAK, it's really hard to make that make sense. So that's why, in my mind, that's why we just say TPAC, because at least we can kind of sort of make a word out of it. So let's jump in and kind of walk through what this looks like.
Already?
Whenever I am having conversations through this. So one of the things that I want to share with you first and foremost is that our learners are empowered with more learning and more technology opportunity than any previous generation, right? They're exposed to more information, more knowledge, and more technology than anybody else. And that's kind of the way it's supposed to be, right? Like every generation, we are building and creating new things, which means that our kids are going to have more opportunity to experience it, to digest it, to discover it, to discern it, all different pieces. I just want to make sure that we understand that and we remember that because it's going to be important as we move forward.
Yeah, they wouldn't connect. I think they were connected to my Chromebook.
That we keep that in mind. I'm going to pause for a second and just say, if you can, please make sure that you're muted. I know there's some of us that we might have just popped on, but if you can make sure that you're muted, that'll help us make sure that we're keeping things moving forward on it. Okay, sorry about that. So you can go ahead and pop over to the next slide, please.
I'll try to help you with that sound there too.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so again, if you can just check on your screen and make sure that your mic is muted, that'll be really helpful. All right, so one of the things that I like to share with teachers is this graphic, and I call it signal strength, and it basically equates our learning standards and our outcomes based on cell phone signals. And this becomes really important to me because I live out in the middle of nowhere, and we don't have really great cell phone strength. That said, I can do a lot of things with one bar, right? And one bar is still really important. And on this graphic, you're going to see that I've got blooms in here. I've got Webb's depth of knowledge in here. But then at the bottom, in that really small kind of italicized font, I've got typical assignments that we would use when we're talking through digital projects or digital activities. And so what I've done is I've layered these over so that when we're talking about activities, we really start to understand what depth of learning, what is our learning standard that we're after, that we're trying to get at. To answer your question, yes, you're going to get a copy of that, of this presentation. We'll share it. We've been sharing the link in the chat, but we'll keep sharing it so that way you can get it. So on here, again, one bar is important because that's our remember level. This is our routine retrieval. This is where we're talking about things like flashcards, drills, practice, quizzes, right? So this is a basic foundational information that we really need to have. And that's important, right? Like I can't get to 5-6 bars if I don't have one bar. So I've got to keep that in there. But then we're going to move on and build that forward. And one of the things that I, again, really want to draw your attention to is if you are putting this verb on blooms at a higher level, I want to make sure that your lessons are matching that. And this is where we're going to talk about equity of experience and opportunity, because in today's age, we need to make sure that we don't misinterpret teacher autonomy with equity of opportunity and equity of experience. A lot of times as an instructional coach, we operate off of the mindset of, well, if we're only going to work with the willing. And I agree with that to an extent, right? But at the same time, we want our learners to have the same opportunity and the same opportunity for challenging and for digital and for technology-based learning experiences. And so, again, that's where kind of pulling from Shannon's conversation, some of those opportunities where as a district we can create kind of curriculum lines around, this is what is being introduced in kindergarten, this is what's being introduced by sixth grade. Those kind of things are going to really help us build into some of that. So let's move forward a little bit, Shannon. Okay, so when we are talking about designing our learning experiences, one of the things that I really want to bring to your attention is that we've got to boot up the brain, right? Like one of the biggest misnomers is, well, if it's technology, then that means my kids are going to be engaged. And then there's also this misunderstanding out there that our kids today have, short attention spans and all of this stuff. It's actually that it's not that our kids have a shortened attention span. It's that there are so many things competing for their attention that we really have to ratchet up what we are doing to make sure it's worth, quote unquote, their time to devote their attention to it. Okay. And so, so many times we have multiple tabs open, but we're only engaged with one. And so again, I want you to kind of keep that analogy or keep that kind of vision in your mindset and focus on how are we going to create that lesson? How are we going to design that lesson to most attract their attention and create that true engagement? So let's take a look at what that's going to look like. So first and foremost, there's 3 parts to creating a really good lesson, right? So number 1, we have to identify the desired result. Number 2, then we determine the acceptable evidence, like what is it that's going to let me know that they've learned this? And then 3, we design the learning experience that will get us to all of that. So you guessed it, this is understanding by design. This is backwards design thinking, right? This is UBD at its finest. But we can't forget that part whenever we're really breaking down our lessons. So identify our desired result. What is that outcome? What's the thing we're after? And we're going to talk about this in just one second when we break this apart in TPAC. Then we look at what's acceptable. How will I know? The answer to that is never going to be because they passed the quiz. Okay, so please keep that in mind. The answer is not they got a 70 or a 90 on the practice drill. The answer is going to be what are the acceptable pieces of evidence that will show you what they know. Okay, and then we design that learning experience. That's where we get to have all the fun stuff that jumps into that. All right, so this is a quote from my good friend, Dr. Katie Novak, and I think this is so important whenever we jump into coming in with these things, because again, a lot of times we talk about teacher autonomy, we talk about teacher style, we talk about the flair and the why and all of these different pieces. And that is very true, but our core curriculum, our core learning standards, those are our firm goals. How we get to that is where it gets to be flexible. And that's where we get to be flexible for students of different learning styles and learning interest points. That's where we get to be flexible for teacher preference. That's where we get to be flexible for device and for pedagogical opportunities. So firm goals, flexible means, and let's jump in and see how that's going to all come together. So here is the overall graphic of TPAC. So again, we don't start with technology, we start with content. So number 1, we create the key content that's critical to the lesson. So whenever I sit down with teachers, I actually do this on my iPad, and I've created slides and explain everything. You could do it in any type of app that you would like, or you can actually use, I've even used transparencies and or colored cells, and then I write on them. So then that way we can have information to where we're kind of writing those pieces out. I do this with workshops just with dry erase markers and dry erase boards and materials like that. So when we list the key content critical to the lesson, this is where we're talking about our standards, right? So this is going to pull directly from those standards that you're using, whether you're using core, Common Core, or if you're in Texas, your TEKS. You're listing those very specific things that you're trying to get across, right? So maybe it is thematic elements, maybe it is counting on a number line, maybe it is the periodic elements, whatever it is for your content area, you really want to break that apart. The other part that I want to draw your attention to is that this is critical to the lesson, not to the unit. This is specific to the lesson because we are designing one specific lesson and then building forward from there. We have a tendency when we start talking through instructional practices to go really, really big and try to create an entire project. Instead, I want you to focus on the lesson so that we can build incrementally and see how this will work into our everyday practice instead of just doing a project, a quote unquote digital project. All right, so once we've listed out the key content critical to the lesson, and most of the time, this is just bullet points over on the side, then we're gonna look at our pedagogy. And so this is where we're talking about the delivery strategies. So again, bullet points. And what I talk about with teachers is like, just give me what are the best pedagogical strategies that work with this. So maybe it's debate, maybe it's think, pair, share, maybe it's jigsaw strategies, maybe it's, whatever those types of things are. Okay. These are the pedagogical, the instructional strategies that you use with this content that really helps you get there. Maybe it is maybe it's station rotation, whatever that looks like, you're just listing those delivery strategies. Okay. And if you'll see, if we have the reason why we have these as three different colors is in these two so we look at our content and we look at our pedagogy and then we see what overlaps. And at this point, this is where I ask my teachers to start matching. So like what standard works best with what delivery strategy. And so then that way they're starting to connect points, right? And they're starting to say like, this is the way that I really like to do this. This is the part that I've seen a lot of success with, or you know what? I've always done it this way, but my teaching partner does it this way. And I want to try it this time, right? And this gives that teacher that you're having this conversation with, that you're coaching with, they are the instructional powerhouse, right? Like this is their area. This is what they are known for, is really creating this, and you're giving them credence by letting them show what they know in these opportunities, right? As an instructional coach, you can help bolster that conversation if you need to by giving them some, by helping them, prompting them and priming the pump a little bit. But once you just give them a couple like I said, like debate, like think, pair, share, things like that, then they start, really remembering, hey, I know this, I know all these different pieces that come in with it. Okay. So once we have our two, the 1 and 2, then we move into available technology. And this is where I really like to stress that technology truly means anything. Technology is just an advancement on what that material is, right? So technology could be colored pencils. Technology could be dry erase markers. Technology could be Padlet. Technology could be Flipgrid. Technology could be all these different pieces. And again, we're just going to bullet point them. This is where we really want to go back to that content. Okay. So whenever we're saying like, I need for them to be able to explain the difference between theme and main idea. Okay. Then what's the available technology that will help me get that information, right? So we're kind of trying to keep that in mind, and again, keep it as narrow as possible. So this kind of sounds like it's going to take a little bit of time. And to be truthful, the first time you do this, it's going to take about 30, 45 minutes to really dive in and go through all of this stuff. As you start to work through this, it's going to get a lot quicker, and it'll become one of those pieces that just almost is intuitive as you start to develop it. One of the other pieces that I want to make sure that we hear in this is Nowhere in here is there anything specific to a subject area. It's up to that teacher that you are working with to provide that content area. I know earlier there was a comment that came in about, I know how to look at this through this lens. Like for me, for example, I was a former English teacher. It's really easy for me to look at these strategies and apply my lens of English onto that. That said, as an instructional coach, I also worked with pre-K teachers, pre-K bilingual teachers, all the way through senior level physics and AP biology and all of that. As an instructional coach in a small district, I served pre-K through 12 and walked into any classroom, calculus, all of those different pieces. It wasn't up to me to be the keeper of the content knowledge. It was up to me to help them with their instructional practices, right? So they provided the content, and then I helped them understand what ways we could get there to help them take their information and make it a little bit more palatable through some different instructional practices. So Shannon, if we can pop forward. Okay, so my favorite way of doing this is, if you've ever done any work with me, you've probably seen me, I carry around these cubes, and I call this roll the dice for learning. And so in my mind, there are two ways where we're going to introduce technology. We are going to introduce technology when it enhances or improves our lesson. Not always do we need technology, right? So there's two ways that our lessons can be enhanced or improved. The first one is that it enhances authentic engagement or understanding of the information. Okay. And so maybe that is, instead of me as a teacher lecturing that information, maybe that is popping a quick, simulation through to where they can actually see in 3D the molecule that they're examining. And so something that is going to allow that authentic engagement for them to really, truly understand it and move it around. Okay. Or maybe it helps make it more relevant because they are understanding it through, pop culture, and it creates that tie-in that they already have in their, it makes it more relevant to them because it's an experience that they're familiar with. The other way is to enhance the demonstration of learning. So instead of it being a 10-question multiple choice quiz, this allows them to create a video to explain their thinking, or use a stop motion animation explanation, or create a interactive virtual or augmented reality type situation to bring this to their forefront. So when I put all these things together, I typically will use two dice, and on one of them I put out all of the different apps or platforms that would allow for an enhanced authentic engagement. So maybe that's YouTube, maybe that's Brain Pop, all of those different types of things, and I would put them kind of have those words or have those logos on each one of the faces of the dice. I usually try to keep that a different color than my one for enhanced demonstrations of learning. And that might be Flipgrid, that might be Padlet, that might be, Animoto or Adobe Spark, or all of those different things. And sometimes those tools are the same. It just depends upon your circumstance. What I do when I'm working with teachers is that we roll the dice, and once they know what their lesson is, then they pull from one dice that is the authentic engagement. And so maybe they'll get Brain Pop, and then on the demonstration of learning, they'll have Flipgrid. And so then they are going to come up with, how does that look together through an app smash? So maybe that's, if we're talking about an elementary classroom, maybe that is, they watch a quick Brain Pop over the water cycle, and then they hop into Flipgrid and they explain what they just learned learned in a quick little 3, 2, 1, formative assessment type piece. And then if I want to up that up that to the next layer, then they can go in and respond to each other's analysis and say what they agree with and what they think they might be able to improve about that, right? So it's just lots of different ways to where you are creating your lessons based around what you have, what you're familiar with, and what you want to build that knowledge in order to kick it up to the next level. All right. So here's just kind of again, a little quick representation of what that looks like. On here, I've got pear jack, I've got poplet, and I've got padlet. And so again, just like all different kinds of pieces, whatever you have. If you are the instructional facilitator, then, go through like what you know that you have access to. Like for me, I know that we've purchased these specific apps. These are the ones that I want them to look at. I might have a set of dice for specific content area. I might have a set of dice for specific grade levels. It all just depends upon what it is that I'm doing. I go to, so I have a lot of different dice, and I know some of you are asking like, do you have a master for this? I can share with you how I put mine together, but my master dice are not going to be your master dice because you have different platforms than I do. And so I'll tell you what I've done is I've gotten like wooden cubes from when I first did this, like 8 years ago. I went to Hobby Lobby and I got wooden dice. And then I got the little garage sale stickers, the little teeny tiny round ones. And I went and I printed out the logos for all the different things that I was working with. And I literally had like a little logo stick-in party, and I made my little dice and did it that way. And then I made, I call them my Starbucks cards, and they are, these are recipe books that I basically took like poplet, and then I put down, these are all the different types of activities that you might do with a poplet. And then I had a QR code that went to either me explaining how to use it, or to the app store or to a demonstration of that. And then they could, if they knew what to do with that app, then they could rock and roll with it. Or if they didn't, they could get more information from that. Now I also have gone to just the local dollar store, and I have dry erase cubes with a surface on each side that has a dry erase. And so I go in and I ask people, like, we just brainstorm it, kind of like we did whenever we started off this webinar. Like, what are your favorite things that you're using right now? And so we might have Wakelet on one side, we might have Padlet on one side, we might have all these different things. And then whenever you're working in groups, it allows people to explain what they know about something. So they kind of get to have that like genius bar situation, but it also allows you to kind of keep building things as you move forward with it. So we can pop in and explain a lot of that as we move on to the next pieces. So all right, Shannon, what we got next? Okay, so here's the last piece that I want to share with y'all, and then I'm going to kick it back over to Shannon. This came from research that came out this summer from the pandemic, and from our learning experiences in late spring, moving into us coming into the fall. And one of the things that was really important to me was to say, like, what were the things that we learned? And this was what we learned. So first and foremost, we learned that we've got to be flexible, right? Like, we've got to assume the positives that our kids are not willingly not logging in or refusing to participate, but instead we've got to understand and find ways to build in flexibility. And so what does that mean? That means that instead of only offering something on one specific day, can we create, some office hours on Tuesday and Thursday for them to ask questions instead of only saying, nope, it's on Tuesday at 4 o'clock. And if you can't be there, then that was your one chance, right? So assume the positives, create some flexibility in there. Maybe it's allowing them multiple ways to represent the information or some of those types of elements. The other piece in this was collaboration. What are ways that we can create new opportunities for students to connect and collaborate together. And this became really, really important because collaboration is when we learn most. Just like right now, you guys are having this opportunity to collaborate with us, right? Like we're sharing what we know, you're sharing what you know, and that creates new knowledge. The same thing happens with our kids, right? And so we've got to create ways that allow them to connect so that they can create new learning opportunities, which means that we also have to communicate and connect often, right? We can't just be one-way information where we're just pushing stuff out and sending everything through Google Classroom, because then it just it kind of becomes snowblind to it, right? Where it's like all happening around us and we have no idea what's going on. And so we want to make sure that we are communicating, but that we're also connecting. I will share a very quick aside on that and say that last year, as my son, who is now in 6th grade, was in 5th grade, he had 7 teachers, and in the middle, once the pandemic happened, he only saw 2 faces of his teachers from that point forward. So 5 of them, he never saw their faces again through the rest of that school semester, because not that his teachers weren't communicating with him, but there wasn't a time for him to have a conversation. And so I think that that's something that we really want to, keep that in mind. The last part in this bottom part is feedback, right? So making sure that we're looking at progress and process, not just product. Okay. So as an English teacher, this is really important, right? Like if all I do is grade that final essay, I have no idea how to keep my kids learning and building, right? I'm only checking their product, not taking a look at how they're progressing and what their process looks like. So find time to make sure that you're checking in on each one of those. Create those vulnerable check-ins and be honest. Just like we were talking about at the beginning of this webinar, when Shannon was like, things always work until we get ready to go, right? We got to be vulnerable, and we've got to say like, hey, there are these days when things aren't working right. Or, you know what? I don't feel like getting out of bed either today. This is me and my messy bun, and I'm here with you. So whatever that looks like in there, just making sure that we have time to be human, and that we allow that same thing with our kiddos. And then lastly, creating multi-means for representation whenever it comes to accessibility situations. So if you have an assignment and it is only available through digital means, what ways can we create for our students to have access to that information if they don't have a steady internet connection? Or if it is only available through audio, what opportunities do we have to have a transcript available, or to have, multi-representations of that situation? So again, lots of information in here, and we can always talk about this. As you can see, I get super excited about it and running through all these pieces, but so much to keep in mind as we move forward. The thing that I really want to keep in mind and keep at the forefront of all of our conversations is that good instruction doesn't have a location. So many of us on this call are either in hybrid situations or high flex situations or parallel or whatever we want to call it. Some of us are in face-to-face. Some of us are, we're rotating or maybe we're completely and totally online. It doesn't matter where learning takes place as long as learning takes place, right? So don't let a change in your situation change your change your passion for your instruction, right? Like build from it and present your content so that your kiddos want to have an opportunity to learn it. All right. I think that's, there we go. So in the chat, please make sure that you guys are sharing your thoughts and kind of coming in with all of these pieces. Again, the last thing that I want to say about all of that stuff that I just ran through with you guys, a lot of us, if you're an instructional coach position, you're not sure how to bridge that, have that conversation with your teachers and it not feel like I'm trying to change your practice. By letting them be the speaker, the knowledgeable person, by letting them own their content, you're letting them be in charge of that conversation. And that's the best thing that we're after. As a coach, whether it's an athletic coach or it's an instructional coach, you want to support and improve their opportunity. You don't walk in and say, hey, you don't know what the heck you're doing. do it my way and you'll figure it out. Instead, you take a look at what they offer, and then you find ways to promote their strengths and their interest points in there. All right, Shannon.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing all that. And we're going to talk now, and we would love to have you guys just continue to add ideas as we go, just for when we're thinking about all these things, like how are we creating and curating and coaching digital learning within our school and within our different roles that we serve. And so the first thing that we would love to hear from all of you too is, how do you learn about different technology and where do you turn for support and help? And at my school, just to give you some ideas, we do a lot of new technology, and we bring in things like, we brought in unruly splats. If you've never seen these, you have to check them out. You code them, and then the kids, they play these amazing games with each other. We also brought something really cool yesterday, 3 Ducks Design. And with both of these, you see that the kids are Zooming and Skyping with people. And one of my biggest tips is reach out to the companies and ask them. They are on Twitter. I see a lot of you, talking about social media. Like, not only are teachers and librarians and coaches sharing, but also the people who are creating these things. And whenever we kick off something new, we invite those people to come and Zoom with our kids. And it's not only teaching them how to do it, it's teaching me too how to do it. And I feel more like an expert after that as well. And so find the companies on social, reach out to them if they're not on social, in an email to them. And I can't stress enough how much they love having conversations with all of us, when it comes to questions that we have or ideas. And we're also we have now done 3D printing for several years, but we're kicking it off with our 3rd graders this week in a project around Valentine's Day. And we have monoprice 3D printers. And I always have questions. It never fails when we're tying it into not only a project that we're doing, but also just kicking it off with a new class. And I turn to just the chat a lot on social media, or I reach out to them in an email to ask for help. And I can't say enough about all the ideas too that I just get from all of you on the Facebook group. And if you don't belong to the Future Ready Librarians Facebook group, even if you're a coach, I highly recommend it, because you can find so many ideas, but also ask so many questions. And that is one of the things that I think is just so important about the community that we have there. Now, the next thing is, what do you use to curate and organize digital tools and ideas and projects around technology? Brienne talked a lot about all the different things that she uses and talks about, and I love her dice idea. And I can't remember what you called it, like Starbucks menu or something. And I love that too. Just keeping track of how we're using that and using those things when it comes to different grade levels, or even what time of year. I have a hard time sometimes just remembering, if I didn't keep track of all of those things and when I used it and how I used it and what grade I used it with, it would be a lot to keep track of just how I was kind of evolving in their use of technology and that collaboration. But a couple of things that I do, I told you the little hint about like asking to belong to everybody's calendar. And within Google Calendar, like, you don't have to have them on all the time. And so I turn off the calendars when I want to see, something else, or I turn it on. I leave notes in the calendar. And when I belong to all of those little Google Classrooms, even though this looks pretty overwhelming, it actually isn't overwhelming. I filter all of them into just a folder and I look through them quick. But when I belong to those Google Classrooms, I can quickly just look through these. I can see what they're sharing, if they're sharing the resources that I'm sharing, if they're sharing the technology, what they're using. I can pop in and say, hey, do you need my help? Or I see that you're doing like farms, or I see that you're doing area, like whatever it is, I can then kind of reach out and find a way to collaborate. Another thing is just being able to curate these things. And if we use all of these, resources and we're librarians or coaches or teachers, it's really overwhelming to keep track of them. And so a few things that have been really helpful for me, Symbaloo over the years, if something happened to Symbaloo, I would be so sad because this really organizes, it's our toolbox for everything that we do. I also use Collections by Destiny, and this has been a huge lifesaver because I can curate things, I can create a collection, but I can also tie in my resources that I have in the library. If it's an ebook or a book on the shelf or a database or even a resource that is online, I can keep it all nice and neat. And then I can share these if we have, like, for example, third grade is kicking off 3D printing. I can pull out that collection on 3D printing, the picture books that we have, if we have an article maybe that's in PebbleGo, if it's a digital resource where the kids can look at ideas. And so all those things are nice and neat. So then I don't have to scramble to be able to find them every time when we're planning together. Another thing that I've been doing a lot of this year, and I know a lot of you have too, are choice boards. And our choice boards, even though the kids love going there a lot of times just for fun, our choice boards are deeper than that because they're really tying in, and they started last year when we were all at home learning, but we've been back in school now since August, full time every day since August with our kids. And these choice boards are really directing our teachers so much better to the resources that we have. If it is tying them to PebbleGo or ebooks or maybe Britannica or a video, anything that we can think of that we can bring together when it comes to, not only them maybe learning and exploring by themselves, but really tying into the curriculum or current events. We have the inauguration tomorrow. And so these have been really popular with our kids. And it's great because they can explore them by themselves. They can explore them if they're face to face. And we have a lot of kids still that are learning remotely also. We do one too for like every month. And this is where kind of that student voice and choice come in. And I love that about technology because we have a lot of kids who love doing projects with their hands. We have a lot of kids who love doing coding or making with Legos or maybe creating like with Minecraft. And so we can give them choice on where they want to go to. Now, one thing too, when I listen to my teachers, a lot of times I think if it's like after collaboration or maybe they've sent me a note, and we have a lot of resources, so it can be really kind of crazy sometimes and a little overwhelming for them. So I always try to think of how I can make it as easy as possible. One thing lately was we use a lot of Breakout EDU, and there are a lot of them, but we use them with our class. We use them for teaching, but the teachers also wanted the kids just to be able to get to them if they had extra time, or maybe they had it for a brain break during the day. And so I have started just a monthly choice board with like 6 just breakouts that the kids can go to anytime. And the teachers were so excited because it just gives them another place where they know they can send the kids to tie into something that they're doing within their curriculum, or maybe to enhance something like coding, like anything that I can think of just to really support and help the teachers. I also have to mention Pear Deck, and Pear Deck has been something that we've used for a few years, but Pear Deck really became important to us a lot more during remote learning, and it has just kicked off how we have used it this year. And with our new social studies curriculum, one of my favorite things we did this year was our third grade teachers. They have been tying in all of their lessons into these giant Pear Decks, and they include questions, they include places to go for Bunsey, they include our choice boards. So if you have never checked out Pear Deck before, it is part of, it's extension of Google Slides, and it is just amazing. And I love now that they also have a shared teacher dashboard. Now, as we get ready for a very exciting event, I love this every year, and it is February 25th this year is Digital Learning Day. And on Digital Learning Day, we have really focused around, all the technology that we have. And because we use so much at our school, and there's so many other things out there that I'm constantly wanting to share, Digital Learning Day is a good day for us just to focus on some of those things we have, but also to give the kids a chance and the teachers a chance to see some of that technology in a different light, something that they can do that is just a really fun day that we can play with technology. And it might be technology that we have on our computer or a device, or even like playing with old technology or building from recycled technology, like all kinds of things, but just a day to celebrate digital learning. Now, last year, what we did is we brought them together in stations, and the kids came to the library, all of the kids, and we had it open for middle and high school too. And they participated in all kinds of stations around coding and robotics and digital storytelling with Buncee, anything I could think of just to bring it together to have a really fun day of celebrating. And even though this was one day, we continued these and we had these available, and it came in really handy when we were all at home to have these stations available for our kids to be able to do them at home as well. Well, this year, I'm thinking a little bit differently about Digital Learning Day, because even though we're back at school, we don't have our library open for all the kids to come to, and we can't all be together in one place at a time. And so the kids are in their classrooms. And so I thought I would put it together in a really fun, just a digital learning day choice board. And so on this, all of these will be active kind of stations that are all digital. They can be too, that what I'm going to do is make this just a whole week of celebration where they can celebrate, digital art, but also things with their hands. They can build online, but also build with Legos and some of our robotics that we have, and just thinking about it differently. But this will be something too that all of you can use. And so I'm really excited to share this soon. And it's going to be a really fun day just for us to be able to celebrate digital learning, but I think come together if we're at school or at home and really celebrate some of that technology that we have. And like I said, it is a great way for you to collaborate, for you to show what is possible, for you to also, communicate and have that be a day that you listen to your teachers. If you hear a teacher say like, oh, I would love to use that, or that looks really fun, write that down and remember it, because it's a great day to kind of capture those things that others love as well. And we have something really exciting to share, and I'll let Bree share this. And this is something that is going to be kind of a place for us to share ideas that we have and lessons and tips and tricks, kind of like what we've been doing today. But also it's going to be something that we can get great ideas from too. So Bree, I'll let you talk about this for a minute.
So this is something that we are super excited to kick off, and you can find this from the digitallearningday.org website. We'll put that in there so that way we'll put that in the chat so that way you have access to it. But if you haven't already gone to digitallearningday.org, please do so. Go ahead and join the network, because that will get you access to a lot of information that we'll be sharing through emails and social media and things like that. But like we said, there's this particular page that just launched on the site today, actually, which is this kind of interactive notebook of sorts for digital learning resources. So once you go in there, you can search it by what state you're in, what grade level you're looking for, potential kind of categories, all that kind of stuff, and what it'll show you what those things are. So you might see that you've got activities in there, that there's specific events, maybe there's webinars, all different types of things. Just go in there and search it out. And then you can also add in your own ideas. And right now, I will give you a little tip. Whenever you go in and you start adding your resources, you can add one resource at a time, but it's really simple. Once you add that resource, then just go in, click the second, it'll come up and it'll let you add the second one. It'll maintain some of that information as you go through. So it's pretty quick, but we would love to get as much information in there. We're almost at 1,000 people on the Digital Learning Day network. And so hopefully with all of you fine folks out there, you'll jump in there today and share, because we know that that's where things are really done, is that magic in sharing and that collaboration.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I can't wait to read everybody's ideas. So please share. And everything that we have shared today is linked in the slides. So you can click on those 2 slides that Bree just spoke about, and you'll find the link. And so somebody asked about like the stations, everything is linked. So you can use choice boards, you can use the stations, the ideas, the curriculum, I think somebody asked about, and I'll be sharing that really soon because I'm just making some tweaks. But if you want, I can share what we have right now. So I'm happy to share that too. We wanted just to wrap up just by sharing a few things. And if you're new to Future Ready or Future Ready librarians and coaches, we wanted to put in some slides so you can find more information out about these 2 groups. It's always nice to have those to be able to get to that really quick. And so you can just click on those and it will take you to those sites. We also have 2 new podcasts that Bree and I do, but we have 4 of them actually for Future Ready Schools. And Leading Through the Library, we're just kicking off our 2nd season, but you can go to the link or click on the slide to be able to find either Leading from the Library or also Bree, you want to talk about yours?
Yeah, so we also have Coaching Through Uncertainty, and it's a really great resource. I mean, all of the podcasts are truly fantastic. In Coaching Through Uncertainty, we talk with a lot of different lenses, specifically through instructional practices, whether it's assistant superintendents of curriculum and instruction, instructional coaches in the classroom, really kind of across the gamut to talk about what does this look like? What are you doing right now? How are you, how are you responding to these changing needs that we are dealing with? And so would just really encourage you to check out a lot of those options out there and see where you can come in.
Yeah, and you can find them wherever you listen to your podcast. And it's really great because there was so many great sessions. Bree, I loved listening to the ones that you did, and I love Carl and listening to Adam's and of course Tom's. And so I learned so much during those, and I hope you guys check them out too. Also for the Future Ready Schools librarians, and this is something too that is so helpful just to be able to kind of reflect on our practice as we kick off a new year. And we also have this great conversation starter. And this is nice too. We're talking about collaboration today. So if collaboration is something that is new or you're really working, that's one of your goals this year, I really highly recommend to check out this conversation starter because it is very helpful. We also have our Future Ready Librarian Challenge series, and this will, I think, the first part of February start up again. You can get more information at that link below, and that has been just really fun to see some of those things that have come from that too. Bree, did you want me to talk about this?
Oh, sorry. So in one of the other pieces that's out there is this last year, we released the Future Ready high quality remote learning, how to use this, how to approach remote learning using the Future Ready framework. And it's absolutely fantastic resource. I use this all the time. You can go to futureready.org/remote and download it, check it out. You guys won't be sad at all that you did.
Yeah, it's nice because you can go through the different, the framework, and you can see like challenges for remote learning and then ideas to consider. So just a great way to support us. And it's been awesome too, just to share that like with my teachers and administrators and others. And so something really good to share too. So please sign up for Digital Learning Day. We would love for you to join us. If you don't belong to the Future Ready Librarian Facebook group, please join us there as well. If you have any questions at any time, reach out. There's great conversations going on using the Future Ready Libs. I was on Instagram today. Actually, it's one of my favorite places to go. You can look up the hashtag and look at all the fun things that people are sharing. I got lots of ideas for new books today too. So it's one of kind of the little tips that I have. And we're just really glad that you joined us. We can't wait to see you in February and March. We'll have 2 more Future Ready Librarian webinars. Also, our institutes are going to be announced soon, and they are, just to give you a heads up, I think the end of February and first weekend of March. And those will be shared really soon too. So we're really glad that you joined us. I can't wait to kind of catch up on the chat and see the questions, but feel free to reach out if you ever need anything or have questions, and we're always happy to help. And Bree, thanks for joining me today too.
Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun, and we cannot wait to stay connected with y'all. So please make sure that you join the Digital Learning Day Network and let us know how you choose to use these tools. We would love to hear it. Tag us with #FutureReady, and we will see you on the interwebs. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.